What's up, guys? Welcome to On the Block. Igor Henriquez, Joe Verfari here, and big shout out to Zane Shaw for producing the show today. But what I wanted to do today was start about the Los Angeles Clippers obituary, and I want to bury them right now because
we're not doing
with this because we had talked about the season as it went on, and a lot of people, including yourself, have picked the Clippers to win the championship.
I did.
And I don't want to go all Stephen A. Smith, but
How do?
But I didn't get the cowboy hat either. But to say that everybody was disappointed would be an understatement for sure. But I hate to say it. As you know, I saw it coming.
You did predict that on the show we did outside that you had them having some sort of collapse. I think you were one of the only ones that I recall ever hearing that. Looking at the series as a whole, I will say, I mean, I've gotten some pushback on this. To me, it's the biggest choke job in NBA playoff history.
It's not.
In my opinion, it is, and I'll set you the facts. Yep. One, it's again heavy favorites, a 3-1 series lead, yep. And in every single game where they could have closed them out, they had strong double-digit leads. Yep. And I don't think you'll find a series where a team that was again a contending team that was supposed to be an NBA champion had those kind of issues where you're up 3-1, and then you have a game 4 where you're up, I think it was either 18 or 20, and then you're up 16 in game 6, and then you're up, I think it was 12 in game 7. And then you utterly collapse in 3 straight games. I think it's probably unheard of. And that's to me why, again, there's the whole thing, I've got the pushback, LeBron against the Mavs. That was a 2-1 series lead against a team that I've already stated was probably underrated considering they swept the Lakers, and which was Kobe's team at the time, and then they beat Kevin Durant and Westbrook in another.
When
series.
They were 21.
When they were young, but again, Durant was still a heck of a player then.
They were 6 seed, I think.
Well, like I said, but again, the Kobe Lakers I think were champions then, and they swept them. So again,
we're not going to debate talent though. The Miami Heat were the much better team.
Yeah, so, and then we'll take it up. But I think that, but again, if they had been up 3-1,
I say the Golden State versus the Cavs was a better choke job being up 3-1.
But see, but the thing is, you don't have okay. So they basically maybe were the better team, but they didn't have a better player. And I don't think you can legitimately say that while Jokic and Murray had a great series. If you were going to take an individual player, you'd probably take Kawhi over either one of them in most situations. So
Paul George, maybe not after this series.
Not
we can talk about that too.
But to me, it's again when they didn't have the proper mentality, and I think that's their biggest issue that I saw going into the bubble. You got Lemon Pepper Lou out there at Magic City grabbing some wings. What do you think? I still don't believe that story whatsoever.
Grab some ass.
I've heard that the food there at the strip club is pretty good. I've never been to Magic City.
Are you ready to risk it all though?
But I wouldn't risk it all for that. And a lot of guys did not want to be there. And I think that's the biggest
really
thing. That's what's been coming out. A lot of those Clipper guys
didn't want
to be in the bubble entirely. And when you go in that with that kind of attitude, I think it showed.
Yeah.
I think the Mavs might have beat him in the first round if Porzingis hadn't got injured. There was that
the ejection
call. There was a lot of stuff there, and Luka took him to the limit. So they just never really had it come the bubble, which you sort of predicted.
Yep.
But again, it goes to the point where Kawhi had his worst game probably that I've ever seen him play in Game 7, untimely, and then he couldn't rely on anybody else to pick up the slack. Where Pandemic P. Or what are they calling them? Paul George, Paul, whatever the heck you want to call him, just hasn't shown up to be a playoff performer. He had a couple of good games, but he probably had as many bad games as he has good games. And for a guy that needs to be a second star or so forth, like you can't have that. Like for example, we're going to talk about later. The Lakers situation, the last game against the Nuggets, LeBron had a terrible fourth quarter. And Anthony Davis saves his bacon. Let's call it a spade or a spade.
You also got lucky with the shot, but you need some luck too.
Yeah, and you need that opportunity. And then you had other guys like Lou Williams, Lemon Pepper. I didn't see he did not have a good playoff whatsoever. He just didn't have the mentality.
Harold was out for most of the bubble as well.
Harold was out. He didn't look like his normal self.
Yeah.
The whole team didn't look off, and they paid for it against a good Nuggets side that really dug in and did something that teams have never really done twice over, 3-1 down.
And they did that twice. They were down against Utah. I believe it was 3-1 as well.
And
right?
they lost the first game by 40 points.
Yeah.
They were all over the place. So credit to them, but to me, it was a terrible choke job. Terrible choke job.
So obviously the Clippers. What to you was the biggest reason that you think that they came up short?
I think it was a lack of consistency and the
Guys not
the
wanting to
chemistry.
be there.
The guys not wanting to be there. The chemistry was a little bit lacking. They weren't a dominant team throughout. And again, a lot of it is again, you go into a lot of situations where they were managing Kawhi's minutes and doing the whole load management.
The Raptors have done that too.
Right? Yeah, but they also didn't have the 4 month layoff getting into a different situation. That probably played a part where guys get into rhythms and then they get out. You saw it with Pascal. Pascal never recovered being in the bubble. He was great before entering the bubble. Then as soon as he got
I
in the
think
bubble,
that's different. I just think that, was it Dennis Green or Herm Edwards? He wasn't who we thought he was.
Well, I mean, okay.
And I want to, like I said, I've defended him lots of times. He's an all-star, like
Sure.
a fringe all-star at this point in his career, athletic dude. It's just, we're seeing now in the playoffs what it takes to be that alpha male. We're going to talk about the 76ers real quick, how they gave Tobias Harris $180 million or whatever it was. Granted, Jimmy Butler probably didn't want to be there with the circus that was going on. But we're seeing Jimmy Butler's value now. We're seeing Tatum's value right now. We're seeing guys dip in playoff performances. That's what we saw with DeMar and Kyle in years before. In the playoffs, when defense is tight and you really need to get a bucket, the cream rises to the top. And you see which guys are meant for the moment and which guys aren't. And it's plain to see. In the regular season, like I said 1,000 times, Pascal's going to drop 35, 40 points on Phoenix or Sacramento or even maybe the Lakers in a game when the stakes aren't that high. But we've seen guys not be able to bring it. And it's not like a slate on them. They're just, not top 5 players in the league.
Well, I mean, I would counter that.
Paul George, another guy.
I would counter that argument and say that I thought Pascal last year, when they had Kawhi, had a better
that pecking order though, as the second or third guy, right?
Sure. But he was also missing shots that like this year.
The confidence was low.
The confidence was low, and again, you just never know what guys' mental psyches are playing in that kind of environment, and how they deal with being like in those situations where they can't move out of the bubble, they can't do this. And I'm sure it affects guys.
Mental toughness
Is tough, and especially if you're not used to it. And let's be real, at Pascal's age, I mean, Kyle hadn't even won a playoff series. His progression's been pretty good. So I'm not going to count him out at 26.
But Kyle at 26 didn't have the cast that Pascal has right now with these guys.
Sure, but he was also never a really elite option at that point too. I would argue. I think he was 20. That was his first year with the Raptors. It was still very much DeMar's team at that point still. So I don't know. To me, I'm not going to write off Pascal over 1 year.
No, we're not writing him off. But like, if we're going to look at it, and like I said, I hate to keep bringing him up, but we're talking about our hometown. Like, if anybody here thinks that Pascal Siakam is going to be, I don't know, Anthony Davis, obviously he's not. If you think he's going to be like a Tatum impact player, he's not. Is he that notch below? Probably. Is he better than like DeMar DeRozan? Probably.
Well, you can see the environment, and going back to the Clippers situation. I mean, just watching Kawhi out there, you like the guy that I saw last year in Toronto.
He seemed unhappy.
He didn't seem like he was his normal.
Enjoying himself.
He was again, especially Game 7. He was just all over the map everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had some moments, that one finger block that he had and stuff like that, but like, he just wasn't the normal guy that you see out there. A lot of that can also be because they were on such a condensed schedule where you're playing every two games and you're getting tired. But like I said, going back to the Clippers situation, it's a bad beat, unquestionionally. And like I said, they got the heat from it because it does make them look like a second-rate team in LA.
But like you said, and I don't want to defend them because, like I said, I didn't have much faith going into it. When the season started, I said probably Clippers over 76ers made the most sense to me at the moment.
Because they had
a lot of people thought that. They had the best team. They had the most depth. But when we look at the eye test and the paper, the lineup on paper, what I wanted to talk about, and I think we did that outdoor show, I want to tell you the reasons for the Clippers' demise. Now, talent-wise, in terms of offensive and scoring, Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Morris, who'd be an elite guy that everybody wanted. On the Knicks, the guy was, granted it was the Knicks, but he was balling out of his mind, okay? You look at a guy like Marcus Morris, and would you not say that he's the exact opposite of a guy that like the Raptors would bring in? A selfish dude, a guy that's worried about himself, not a winner, dumb fouls, trying to injure players like he did with Luka Doncic. That's not the vibe that a championship team has. He's not Charles Oakley, because there's a time and place for guys like that.
Yeah.
You don't have, like, you can be dirty and Dennis Rodman, Oakley, like, there's guys like that you can have on your team and win. I look at a guy like Marcus Morris, is he more skilled than the guys I mentioned? 100%. But when you're trying to win a championship, you look at a team like the Raptors last year, Kawhi's clearly number one. Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, Norm Powell, Pascal Siakam, all those guys after, it's like, they don't have to worry about breaking down your initial guy going in there and then having to make decisions. Okay, who's open? What can I do? They're sitting in the corner, maybe like not getting double teamed. Things are so much easier. And what we saw with Pascal and everybody else on the Raptors is whenever they're trying to create, Boston, for example, was like, okay, we want you to beat us because we don't think that you can one-on-one. And we saw time and time after again that these guys were unable consistently to go through the defense like Boston, who's going to beat you down, wear you down, grind you. Guys like Marcus Smart, Tice.
Yeah.
Oh, they only have what's his name? Tice, whatever his first name is. And he's an elite rim protector. Oh, we got Marcus Gasol. We got Serge Ibaka. We had better players. All of a sudden, shit's hitting the fan, and you're not able to do what you thought you could against these guys.
But here's the thing, Andy. But I would still suggest that the Raptors had the advantage inside. Though I thought
they didn't use it.
They didn't use it because Mark was pretty much terrible the entire series.
But he's been terrible.
Let's be real.
Minus his defensive efforts in playoffs.
But even then, he was a step slow against a really good, quick team with speed. He looked out of sorts. You can tell he had no confidence. He literally just went to the locker room.
Shots for
He went to the locker room because he was so pissed at his performance. That's what had they gotten the best out of those players, the Raptors would still be here. Let's be real about it.
Yeah, but they didn't. They had every opportunity in that Boston series, right? And we looked we did this show, the last show we did. Yeah. You're like, I'm hoping they don't get swept.
Yeah, because they look that rough.
And then all of a sudden, OG hits the shot, and we're like, what's going on? We're like, is this destiny again? Like, are we at least going to the finals? And then you win Game 4. Right? You lose Game 5, you're down 3-2. Game 6 happens, and I go to overtime and you win. You're like, guys, I think this is real. The Raptors are going to take this. Game 7 comes in. It was almost like when they lost to go, what was it? Would have been Game 5 or whatever it was to go down 3-2. And you're like, did these guys want to be here?
But see, there's a difference between this team this year and the team last year. The team last year had this belief because of having a superstar player and going in there that they could do what they need. There was no one had a phenomenal Game 7 on the Raptors. You look at the stats. Kyle had a great Game 6. He ended up, I think, with 14 in Game 7. There was not one of the guys that took the game by the scruff of the neck and ended up and just taking it. Now, the one last thing I want to say about the Clippers, and I think this is to me what's one of the major issues is the environment. In a sense that when Kawhi and Paul George got there, those guys had already been scrappy, a unit. They've been a scrappy bunch. They gave Golden State a lot of problems. The preferential treatment that was coming out in the media, and they just didn't look like they were a tight-knit group that wanted to play for each other. And I think a lot of it, yes, you can have all the talent in the world, but if guys aren't going to play
for loose balls or
the Raptors had that camaraderie.
That's what I'm saying.
I think last year they with Kawhi in there, they had those relationships where they literally would go, head first into the wall for a lot of situations.
And they were, because you could tell they loved each other.
Yeah, I didn't see them in the Clippers. I saw a lot of guys that were
worried about themselves.
Harold and George having fights. George coming out pathetically and saying that this wasn't a championship year. That was weak.
I remember also when they were down like 3-1, 3-2, and then Jokic would say like, "There's no pressure on us; it's all on them." And then Paul George was like, "Oh yeah, we have this." There was no sense of confidence. It was almost like smiling for the camera, saying like, "Yeah, like we have this." When the whole time it's happening, when they were down 3-1, and all of a sudden they come back 3-2 Denver, I'm like, this could actually happen. Like I said, I kind of thought, I didn't know who it was against, but I just looked at them and I said, they didn't have the chemistry. They didn't love each other. Like they didn't, like you said, want to jump on the ball, jump for a loose ball like other teams did, like the Raptors, and even like the Lakers do. And I don't think I'm wrong, or you would agree with me for saying this, is like the Clippers are a more talented team than the Lakers are. Sure. Do the Lakers have the better player? Probably. LeBron James is probably still the best player in the league. Anthony Davis, you could argue, is he better than even LeBron, but then also, like, is he better than Kawhi Leonard? We can toss some guys up. Depth, it's not even close. The Clippers are the better team.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Lakers is they run with LeBron. LeBron's going to dictate the play. He's going to score his 30 points, get his 10 assists, whatever. You know he's going to do that every day. And if Danny Green's not hitting a shot tonight, maybe Caldwell Pope is. Dwight Howard's not having a good game, JaVale McGee will. Always someone is showing up.
Even like the love, and I was watching the other game. Even the love they show for a guy like Alex Caruso that looks like he could have been a rec leaguer at the YMCA. They love that guy.
But they love each other.
They call him the GOAT. They legitimately call him the GOAT because you can tell those guys work for each other, and that's why they've been as successful as
they're happy to be there.
It's the Clipper situation this year reminded me of what the Lakers were last year, but with less talented players, where they were just all over.
Josh Harden, all those guys that didn't like each other,
all over the map with Ball and Ingram, and they were just like guys that were talented but just didn't have any camaraderie. And now you see how the effects are. The interesting thing is going to go next year because Harold, unless he takes a discount, I don't think Harold's going to be back.
I don't think he's going to take a discount.
I don't think he's coming
Lou
back.
Williams might have 1 year left.
That's a thing. And again, they have opt-outs. So if they don't do well next year, I think Kawhi will stay because
he wants to be at home.
He wants to be in that environment. But it could be the end of Paul George in those situations, because if they fail next year, I think that team is in a different situation.
Paul George is the first guy to run away from a challenge, it seems. He talks the game. Where's he gonna go? How many? Like
1, 2, 3, Cancun.
First, yeah, that's the thing, right? That was funny. Shout out to Portland, CJ and Dave and all those guys. But that's the thing. Like Paul George has always been on, minus Indiana, where like they had a good system there. The East was not the best, and they had some good series against Miami. Okay. Paul George is not a guy that's gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna go to, I don't know, a team that has a good culture or something like that. He's been on OKC because he was kind of forced there. He didn't want to be in Indiana. And looking back, maybe he shouldn't have left. Look at what Indiana's done since. They remind me of a little bit like the Raptors kind of team, right? A workman-like kind of team. Not the same talent, but like the same type of, yeah. And I wanted to actually compare the Clippers this year to Miami Heat in their first year. A lot of talent. The LeBron ones. Yeah. All the talent in the world. But remember, so Miami lost to Dallas in that first year. They started off that season, I want to say, like 12-12, 11-13. And a lot of people were saying, like, what's going on here? This team is like a prime Wade, a prime Bosh, prime James. What's going on? And they had guys like Battier, Haslam, who was still young at that point. So people started asking questions. Point of what I'm getting at it with the Clippers is they needed to gel. And there was some stat that I don't remember exactly what it was, but let's say it was the first team in NBA history to have like 5 guys average 16 points a game or more. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this on a previous show. The only reason why they had that stat was because Paul George missed like 2 months from shoulder surgery. Mm-hmm. Kawhi missed every other game. Lou Williams was hurt at times, or just, going. When Lou Williams gets in the game, he hijacks the offense, and it's like, cool, we're going to win by 30. Let him do what he wants to do. Or Harrell, who comes in and, runs the pick and roll with him and does his thing. All of a sudden, you bring in Marcus Morris, who came from another team, was averaging 18. That's another guy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all these guys need the ball in their hands. They're not secondary, third, fourth, fifth guys on the team. They don't know how to move without the basketball. Yeah. In an NBA level, and be your Danny Greens on the team. Like, for whatever the slack Danny Green gets, he'll defend, he'll sit in the corner, he won't say where he's going to shoot his 3. You're not going to get that from Marcus Morris.
He's terrible at trying even those layups.
He's not athletic.
Anything from like close to the rim, like he looks so like he just don't.
So everything hurts.
Uninterested. It looks like it hurts. Like that he's taking like 2-foot shots. But yeah, I agree.
That's what I thought with the Clippers. And you cannot, as we saw with the Raptors at any championship team, you can't have that anymore.
The Heat learned, I think the first year that LeBron was there, that he deferred a lot to Wade. And then
Wade said, "This is your team.
This is your team now." And that's when things got when Miami started rolling. When LeBron didn't take a backseat to Dwayne, who was the lead dog in Miami for years.
For sure, he was arguably the best player in the league.
And that actually helped them out. But again, it's going to be tough because if you look at next year, like let's go back into a lot of guys. Like you got Durant going to be back. In the East, you got other companies. The Golden State Warriors aren't going to be bums again next year.
They're going to have the second overall pick.
Plus all those guys.
And everybody's healthy.
Everybody's healthy. They're not going to be an easy out.
They're legit.
It's going to get harder and harder in that Western conference.
Doncic and those guys are getting better. Portland's going to be better. It's going to be a dogfight.
So there's no guarantee that setup. This is probably their best chance. But it was to me again still the biggest choke job. I'm going to go on that. That's my 3-1, massive leads.
If Lamar was here and I'm going to send him this clip, he would not be happy. We'd be going on. I got that voice a little bit late.
But again, 2-1, 3-1. You can't make it there. And the Lakers were not up. Those are even the games that the Lakers won. They won them by 2. Sorry, not the Lakers. The Heat won. They were 2-3-point wins against Dallas. They didn't blow them out any of those games.
No, but Dallas was one. Yeah, but Dallas was an incredible defensive team. That's the big difference between any of these teams. The Clippers, the Lakers, nobody's on that level.
You can't say it was a choke job if I would agree with you.
A choke job based on it's arguably the best player to play the game, and LeBron James losing in his prime with. So LeBron's the best player in the world. Dwayne Wade was probably the second or third best player in the world, and Chris Bosh is another top 10 guy. So you have 3 of the top 10 players in the world in their prime between 25 and 28 years old, losing to an old Dallas team That's all you need to look at.
Of
course,
Dirk wasn't that old back then. That was like 9 years ago.
Dirk was early. Yeah, I was gonna say 30 something.
Yeah, he wasn't old.
Jason Kidd was old. He was past his prime.
Okay.
Jason Terry passed his prime.
Sean Marion.
Sean Marion passed his prime. Twilight.
Tyson Chandler was the defensive player of the year.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. They had defensive guys.
They had a good team. But that's what it was. LeBron didn't know how to shoot. There was a lot of problems in that series.
Choke job. Maybe not the greatest ever, but a choke job.
Again, I still think that again 3-1 in the second round. That's something that's the final.
You're not losing to Golden State. You're not losing to a Golden State with Durant. It's a choke job. Yeah, is it the greatest ever?
Here's the thing, but like
maybe not.
Okay, but so you got like is Nowitzki worse off than Jokic or Murray? Who had a better team? If you look at the Nuggets right now that came back 3-1, who had a better team? That Mavericks?
Dallas, obviously, but you're talking about the finals in the second round of the playoffs.
That's why it's a worse choke job because the second round is one thing.
That Dallas team lost in the first round to Golden State 2 years before, right?
Again,
and we're going back and forth.
Like I said, they swept the Lakers. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, for sure. We wanted to talk also about Boston and the Heat. So I had made that video before because, and unfortunately, we were unable to do the show before. Mm-hmm. When the Heat won and Boston won, I was just really feeling the way that Jimmy Butler was playing, Tyler Hero, all the young guys. Dragic looks rejuvenated in the starting lineup. Bam's been incredible. We know that. He's, arguably maybe the best defensive big in the league. They're doing all kinds of things, and we came off watching Boston firsthand slap the Raptors. It won 7 games, but it didn't feel like a 7-game series.
The games of the Raptors won were very close and very tight. And Boston won a lot of games that were blowouts.
Yeah. So Miami ends up essentially almost stealing 2 games. Game 1, they were down early. One of them, it was overtime that they ended up winning. One of them, game 2 was not. Boston comes back and wins the last game. Mm-hmm. How are you thinking about this series? How are you evaluating Tatum and Jimmy Butler? And how do you think it's going to play out?
So one of the things that, again, it's always hard, and I mentioned it during the Celtics thing, it's always hard to beat a team 4 out of 5, which Boston obviously has to do. I thought the first 2 games, especially the second one, I think Boston was up 12 or 13 at half in the second game, and then the Heat just absolutely blew them out in the third quarter. The situation is going to be simple for Boston. Now, Hayward's back. That gives them a little bit extra offensive punch. That also takes away a little bit. I think Hayward, if takes away some of Smart's minutes, it takes away some of Tatum's minutes, whoever he puts in there. That to me, he's a little bit of more of a defensive liability. So I would definitely go out.
Much better of an offensive guy.
Much better of an offensive guy than let's say even a guy like Smart, who I am.
Who's shooting out of his mind.
Who I am at the end of the day hoping that he for his king of the North garbage really pissed me off. Yeah. So I am legitimately hoping that Miami shuts them up. To me, overall, they have a better team than Miami. Can I see them still winning the series? I can.
Definitely, yeah.
I can. Even though, like I said, it's hard coming back from those situations. I think it's a very small percentage that if you go down 2-0, it's about 17% or something like that you actually come back to win the series.
So the Raptors do that last year.
This extra day's rest to give Hayward a little bit more recovery time. I don't know why the NBA did that. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, but
because the Lakers, Miami started when the Lakers were still playing their last game, I believe, right?
Yeah, or I thought maybe because they didn't want to compete with Monday Night
Football. Because it's a 2-1 series, I think they're just trying to even up the games.
So the situation with that is, again, I would still favor that Boston, because they have controlled the tempo a lot of in the game, will still win this series. But like I said, I wasn't expecting Miami to go out and win the first 2. So I originally thought that Boston would probably win in 6. It would likely end up being in 7, which I'm still.
Boston in 7, you're thinking.
I would still hope that Miami were able to take it just to shut up Marcus Smart. But
what about Smart's locker room antics that they want to talk about here as well? That outburst of getting into with Jalen.
That's one of those things, because those guys, again, it's one of those things where to win this series, and even with Hayward back, it's if Kemba had a really good game 3. If Kemba gets taken away, we saw Nick Nurse do that in the Raptors games. Because Tatum's going to eat, and Brown can have great games, and he can also shoot himself in the foot and have really terrible games. So that'll be the situation there, and I get why. Smart's a guy that at the end of the day can get very on your nerve, but he missed a couple of big shots in those courts, so you really had a lot of himself to blame there.
Yeah,
he's done some really
But just against the Raptors, he was playing out of his mind.
Even in game 3, I think they were up by a couple points, and instead of using the clock out, he decided to
check shot.
He decided to go into the net and take a shot. He missed the shot. Luckily, they gave him the foul, but he misses that. It was just a dumb situation because he should have run down the clock. Had they and he hit the free throws. Had they not actually given him the foul there, it would have been a tremendous idiotic play. Luckily enough, he hit both free throws, but again, it was an easy foul not to call, to be honest. So I don't know. I think Boston still has the better talent, but again, I am hoping for Miami to win that.
Miami Heat and Boston. Which team would you say more similar to the Toronto Raptors in the style that they play?
I would say that I think Miami plays a similar game, not defensively to the Raptors, but I think Miami's got better shooters. I think Tyler Hero's really come of age in the playoffs. I like Duncan Robinson. I think Miami's similar to the Raptors in specific senses, but they have a guy in Butler that I think can be trusted in the fourth quarter, and if they lose the next game, which I believe they will, I think Butler will still come to play. Where I don't think Butler's going to get get swept for 4 straight. So I mean he's the guy that can get counted on for sure. But again, like Miami getting hot from the 3-point arc with guys like Hero, they can win games simply by doing that because they have the shooters. Like Hero's been phenomenal.
Hero, Dragic, Duncan Robinson, all these guys, right? Like you need to really be honest on them on defense.
I mean, and that's the thing. I think in Boston has a lot of the defensive prowess, the length, and that's what gave the Raptors a lot of problems. The length of Tatum, guys along that nature. Brown's a solid defender. Marcus Smart's all defensive team.
And that's the thing. They made the note too. He made this note. Smart guarding Dragic has been resulting a minus 29 in game 3 for Dragic with Smart guarding him. I didn't know that, but that's insane.
Gordon, you can't. I mean, at his age, you can't expect what you. I think he wasn't a factor all that much in the regular season. Since they got to the bubble, he's had some games.
Because none was starting the whole time, right? And you got to think his confidence was low, and now he's starting. And that's where
the advantage I thought was going to be significant for Boston because they had that situation where you got to take Kemba Walker over either one of Nunn or Dragic, and then you had Bam and Tatum. You can probably say that Tatum's probably a little bit more highly regarded, but Bam's a solid player with that huge block that I showed you the other day. Like they have capabilities, but overall, I would still take Boston's 5. Though the Heat probably have a better bench.
That's the thing, and we talked about even saying here, Boston's really running their stars into the ground, something that Nick Nurse did, and it's fine. It's the playoffs. You want to win and lose with your best players, but you need to manage minutes for your bench. The Heat are the deeper team. Like we saw Wanamaker against the Raptors have some big games, but they don't have the same depth that the Heat do and that the Raptors do. So that's the thing. As this series goes on, I think that a question is going to be: can Boston not be so fatigued and stay fresh? I know they had the extra day off today, but if this series is going to go 6 or 7 like we think it is, does that really give the advantage to the Heat?
I mean, the Celtics already had a really tough
another 7 game before.
Yeah, and again, the Heat had a lot of time to rest for sure. But I think though the point of being in the bubble and not having to travel and do all that, it definitely probably helps because you're going off the court, you're going home, you don't have to go in. It's probably easier to recuperate and play those type of minutes, like the way that Nurse was playing a lot of the Raptors guys.
And get treatment right after the game.
Because you're not traveling. You're literally going back to the hotel and it's like you're at a home game every day. So it's definitely different where guys can just relax the next day and just chill out. But yeah, I think Boston still wins it in 7, unfortunately.
Ship Boston in 7, cool. So I'm gonna go Heat. In 7. I really have a lot of confidence there. I think the next game, you're right, Boston might end up taking it, but I do think that the Heat are going to take the series. Jimmy Butler and Tatum. I was talking with Zane about this earlier. Just for let's say present year, because obviously Tatum's younger. Who would you rather have? Let's say next year, Raptors get quiet at their season to start. Who would you rather take if you're the Raptors? Tatum or Butler if you get one of them for a year? Who would you rather have?
For 1 year?
Yeah, because obviously Butler's older than Tatum.
I think Tatum probably has the higher ceiling based off what I saw in that series. He can be he's on that situation where he's probably an all-star level player, but he's ascending to that next
superstardom.
Yeah, and I think that the Boston team is definitely his team, even though he's got other guys that like Kemba who've been established all-stars at times. And Jalen, I think Jalen's another guy where you just never know really what you're gonna get.
But he's gonna bring it on defense.
Tatum's just physical makeup and the way that he can do specific
just
things.
His shot making and his tough shot making.
He gets away with a lot too. I mean, he definitely pushes off a lot. He gets away with a lot, but he's definitely got the capabilities to be up there. And he's Boston's best player. I would take Tatum in that situation because I believe if we're using age as well. I think he just has the physical makeup to hit higher. I think.
I'm just saying, if you have Game 7, like this series, let's say Game 7, who are you more confident with in this series right now? Game 7. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Because we know Jimmy Butler's personality too, right?
Right now, based on the fact of the veteran things and being there, because the Boston guys, they beat the Raptors. They had those situations where like LeBron took them down, and so in Game 7 I would probably choose Jimmy Butler right now because he's been there, he's done that, the veteran mentality.
And you know he's going to rally the guys, right? For whatever that's worth, and it is worth something, as we saw with the Clippers, they didn't have that.
But and that's the thing, the Heat team is exactly like I'm talking about. Those guys, you can tell they play for each other.
They love each other,
and they work, and Bam works. Like Jimmy doesn't have any problems with Bam. You never see Jimmy really going off.
Because guys like
it was a little bit of a call. I think Jimmy got, I don't know if he got injured, like he got benched for the last like 30 seconds to a minute last game. I don't know why that was, but it was a weird situation there. I don't know what Spoelstra was thinking there, but no, I think as a camaraderie situation, they're better. They're much better in terms of that. So I would take Butler in a Game 7.
Same. You pretty much had said everything I wanted to say. Jimmy Butler's obviously one of my favorite players. Loved him forever. And you don't hear all that stuff we heard with the Timberwolves and with the Bulls that he's, like, not a head case, but like, a problem in the locker room. And I think the thing with Jimmy is he just wants to win. And that gets forgotten a lot. We see that with the 76ers.
Yeah.
Guys talk a lot that they want to win. They'll smile for the cameras and say, yeah, of course I want to win. Joel Embiid for another guy. Oh, I want to win. Taking care of your body is a big part of winning.
Sure.
Being healthy is a big thing. Showing up in big moments of big games is a big thing of that. And Jimmy Butler's a guy, obviously, late draft pick similar to Siakam, but the guy is always the hardest worker in the room.
Yeah.
He leads by example. He'll motivate you with a speech if he has to, and it's tough love. And I'd rather have a guy that's going to get on me, like Michael Jordan did in that documentary, for wanting you to be better and you making this team better. And I think that goes a long way, and that's why the Heat have really rode this underdog wave that they've been on.
If you look at it, like Jimmy's team right now with the Heat doesn't have more talent than his team last year with the Sixers. They're just more. They just have better camaraderie.
Chemistry for sure.
They have better camaraderie.
They want to win.
There's no Ben Simmons on that Heat team. There's no the 76ers had a better team. They just didn't have the camaraderie and guys that were like working. Joel was always with some kind of gastro thing. It was always something with that dude, but.
Okay, so we talked about that. We just about 5 minutes to kind of wrap up where we are with the Lakers and Denver. So obviously Anthony Davis hit that big shot. And I don't want to throw any shade because I like Anthony Davis. But when I saw the reaction of massive shot by Anthony Davis, and it was huge, I just felt the vibe, and maybe I'm wrong for feeling this. They made it seem like he's done this time and time again. It was a tough shot. It's a fadeaway. It's a 7-footer. He switched it, but like, and Kawhi as well. Like even Kawhi shot. Like he's a proven winner. He's hit tough shots, but like, when the shot rolled for 10 times, you're looking at Anthony Davis, it went in, and I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me, man. Well, and they steal another game.
Well, here's the thing, and I'll proclaim it because you can put the clip, whatever. You can send it to the special correspondent. This is like, and if we're being honest about it, this is the Lakers championship to lose.
And I said that.
100%.
I said that outside when we did the show too.
This is 100% the Lakers championship to lose because looking at whoever again, the Denver situation, I thought that game it was going to go at least 5 or 6, but after that bad loss, I mean, I can legitimately see them sweeping them because I think that's a demoralizing situation.
Just like the Raptors game 2 loss, we thought it was going to be a sweep,
right? But then again, that took a last minute like he from OG and a 3-0 there. I think the Raptors would have been
packed it in.
They would have packed it in. A 3-0 they probably would have packed it in. That gave them like you saw what Fred said. Now they're screwed.
That's what I'm saying. Denver had that. Maybe all of a sudden we're talking about game 6 or 7, right? Like we think,
But I think the Denver like let the Lakers off the hook on that situation. Yeah. They're probably a little demoralized. I don't think LeBron's going to play that bad comparatively to that second half that he had. I mean, this is a situation where I think it's Lakers or bust. Like I wouldn't bet against the Lakers not winning the championship. Not even depending on who. I think Boston would be a harder matchup in my opinion because at the end of the day they have the depth on the starting 5 to give the Lakers some problems. He probably have the better shooters. But I don't think that way they would match up. Like for example, either way, who's matching up against Anthony Davis? Nobody. Like who are you matching up with?
But who are you ever matching up with Anthony Davis? Like I know Jokic is 7 feet tall, but like who are you really matching up with? Like when you say Giannis, Anthony Davis, like, LeBron, like
if you're gonna go with you're gonna get, I guess maybe Bam will probably try to check Anthony Davis, and I guess but again he's giving away a lot of height. He's gonna bring him into the more into the perimeter. I don't know. I think it's and the way that the Lakers are playing just as a team. Like Caldwell Pope's hitting some shots. Like freaking Caruso's hitting 18 points.
I know.
And I always joke around. Like I have a buddy up in New York. I always say that Caruso's his older brother because he just basically like he's Caruso, but like 2 feet less. That's basically like what I'm looking at. But I'm gonna say that I'm not gonna say this is a sweep. I'm gonna say 5. I think the Lakers take
steal
5.
one.
They probably steal 1.
Yeah, Zana talked about Jokic on 11-0 run at the end of the game, and really being obviously like their best player. Murray's been on a tear, and that cannot be overlooked. And shout out to him. You know what I mean, for Canada finally getting possibly a superstar there. He's carried that team on his back.
He's what Andrew Wiggins was supposed to be.
Yep. Exactly. And they've been great. I think the thing with Denver is they have a lot of talent, a lot of depth. Barton's been out, and he's a big guy for them. He's been out like the whole time. He's probably like their 3rd best player. Millsap's missed this. Gary Harris signed like a $70 million deal after 2 or 3 years. He looked like he was going to be a guy that was going to get you 18 a game and shoot 40% from 3. It looks like he lost his talent like the Space Jam. It's been embarrassing. I think he's embarrassed being out there. It's been really bad. I don't know what's happened there. Millsap's obviously taken several steps back. Porter Jr. showed glimpses. They had that issue when he said, I need to get more shots.
Yeah. Monty Morrison pretty good.
Monty Morrison's been pretty good. He's been a good shooter for them for a while. Plumlee's been okay when he's been in there. They just, like I said, all their guys, they needed more consistency. They have a lot of guys too that can ball, but then when they ended up losing, when they made the trade with Minnesota, they lost. I'm blanking out on his name, but it was a small forward that's a guy that they could use right now. They ended up sending him to Minnesota in that deal. But
Beasley? No.
Malik Beasley. They could really use Malik Beasley right now. A good shooter, a guy that can defend on the wing, throw another body at maybe LeBron or someone, and a guy that can honestly get buckets.
Well, I mean, the thing with them, and I'll give them credit because I don't think a lot of people had them. I think after the 3-1 on Utah, everybody thought they were done.
Of course.
Man, like this was a coming out party for the Joker. Like his
last year,
his
passing
ability,
it's insane.
It's absolutely insane for a guy that like that last again. The game was over behind the head with like a minute left. Like you don't see shit.
Nobody even sees it coming
like that. And I give that to me the best passing big man of all time. I don't think I've ever seen anybody like that with those kind of hands, with that kind of like.
But at any position, honestly, the only guy I think that is in the same category, and it's Magic Johnson. I think Magic Johnson, LeBron's incredible, but I think Magic's number 1. And to be honest, at this point in his career, I know that it's still early. I think if Jokic stays healthy, he'll be like the 2nd, maybe best passer of all time, just in terms of vision, not assists.
Which is crazy. Like Magic was like a
Magic was in a league of his own.
He was a point guard, right? Like
the Showtime.
And actually, that's another thing that needs to be like credit to Rajon Rondo too, who's having a hell of a
pretty
playoffs.
good. Yeah.
He's been solid too. But man, going back to Jokic, some of those passes, you're just like where the hell his court vision is incredible.
Well, yeah.
And like I said, he's a guy that was like his weight situation. He didn't have a good year.
He slimmed down.
He
always plays himself into shape.
It's one of those situations where if that guy puts like it all, he can be whatever he wants to be.
He can be the best center in the league, right?
His shooting's pretty solid. He can be the best center in the league easily with his passing ability and nearly unguardable because like what are you really doing in all those situations? Because he'll find guys on the court like no tomorrow.
He'll just some kind of skip pass across the court when he sees the defender coming. Like his IQ, honestly, there's very few guys in the league, and even in league history that are like on that level. It's insane. And he's become my favorite player in the league because it's just like without a doubt he's my favorite player in the league.
You look at him, you see the memes of when he was like a little kid and how
the passport photo.
He was chubby and like he was massively overweight. And that's a guy that legitimately. He's a guy that a lot of people can look at, and
that could be me.
That could be me, but
not 7 feet tall.
7 feet tall.
Like the Steve Nash comparison.
He doesn't look like he'd be a basketball player when he was young because he was just overweight and scary looking, really.
Yeah.